I'm Adrienne Enns, and I welcome you to the Intention Sessions podcast. I want to inspire our most intentional living. In each episode, we'll talk to remarkable individuals who will share their authentic journeys and their insights with us. They're going to remind us that life's complexities can be our greatest teachers, and that intentional living can be expressed in an infinite number of ways. I hope you find some inspiration for your most intentional life right here. Today on the podcast, we have Jean McCarthy. She is an award-winning blogger and podcaster who is best known as a voice of recovery advocacy. Her blog, Untitled, began in 2011 and has continued to chronicle Jean's alcohol-free lifestyle since her first day of sobriety. Thousands of readers credit Untitled as a motivating factor in their decision to quit drinking. Jean joined the Bubble Hour podcast as a co-host in 2013. She took over the weekly program as its sole producer and host in 2016. The show has a devoted and enthusiastic audience, and I encourage you to listen to it. She has published 2 books about recovery. The first, The Unpickled Holiday Survival Guide. It's a resource for sobriety over the festive season. And The Ember Ever There, a collection of poems about recovery. At a gala in New York City, Jean was named recipient of the 2017 She Recovers Hope Award in recognition of her efforts to help others seek positive changes in their lives. I also want to add to this a bit of a personal introduction. So we were just talking about this. I was at that event in New York City in 2017, and that's where we met. And I hadn't really shared my own journey publicly. So you were a real inspiration for me. And I just really want to thank you for being here.
Oh, that's so nice. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm happy you're doing this podcast.
Oh, I'm really enjoying it. And as I was preparing for this, I was like, and I don't know if this is cliche to do, but I'm doing it. I had to go back to your very first blog post because I was like, what did she write on day one? Because I know on day one, I felt awful. I was like, I don't even know if I could have typed anything. And this is what you wrote. I've been here before, 1 day sober. I've even been 2 days sober. And once or twice in the past decade, 3 days sober. I haven't gone 4 days without a drink in over 10 years. Stay tuned. This should be interesting. And here we are. So I know this is like a wide open question, but so much has happened between then and now. And I wonder if you'll just start by telling us whatever you want to share about that moment to what life looks like today.
Well, okay, so a decade in a nutshell. Is that what you're asking for?
I know, it could be a highlights reel, it could be your top moments, but I was like, it just blows my mind, right? Like, I just think of that day one for me, and if you had told me my life would look like this today, I would have thought you're crazy. So I'm curious what you think, like when you hear that post, like what just runs through your mind?
Oh boy, I know I was scared for my life. I was very high functioning. I didn't have any, major low bottom events that many people experience. But I could see that that's where things were headed because I was trying to reel it in and I couldn't. And I was trying to quit. I knew I was drinking too much, and I would try to contain it or stop or control it, and it would just result in drinking more. And not that long before I quit drinking, another woman who I didn't know well, who was in a professional organization that I belonged to, had died of a fall at home. And she was known to have been at late stage alcoholism. She was showing up at industry events with the how your teeth turn black when you drink too much
Mm-hmm.
wine at night and you really need to brush your teeth. So she was kind of turning up at events in that condition at the start of the night. And I was horrified for her because I was drinking too much and working so hard to hide it. And I'm like, oh my God, like she can't even hide it. And I was having that sort of shame identity experience of being really fearful of going where alcoholism was taking her, which was public shame. And not and seeing her behave unprofessionally or just XYZ. We know what late stage alcoholism looks like, but for me I was horrified because it was in public at these industry events. And then what happened next was that tragically she died at home of a fall. And no one ever said, that she was drunk or that she felt drunk, but I mean, she was always drunk.
Mm-hmm.
So I, like everyone, kind of connected the dots, and it was just so tragic. And I mean, that is where alcoholism takes us, women in particular. Our bodies are not made to have alcohol poured into it at the rate that it seems to be happening these days. And, it can really destroy your life. It can destroy your health, and it can take your life. And so there was a few instances like that. I also had another neighbor, a friend's husband, who had an accident while he was drunk and he lost his license. And I was seeing the effect that late stage alcoholism was having on people around me. And on the surface, I was responding with shame for them on their behalf, like, oh, that's terrible. But I also was having fear. And so I just knew I didn't want to go there. I was so fearful. I thought, okay, well, I'll quit drinking, but I'd heard you had to have a rock bottom, and I was scared of the rock bottom. I was scared of my children who were, I have 3 sons, and they were all teens at the time. I was scared of what it would mean for them, to whatever tragedy was going to become my rock bottom. I knew it would affect them. I was scared for my relationship. My husband and I have been married a long time. I just didn't want any of that to happen.
Was there something that happened that day? Like
Well,
what
what
made the
made it
choice for
work?
you?
So after starting, finally it was like a bubble burst, and I had one of those moments that, I felt like a hand came out of the ceiling and smacked me on the chest and gave me this shaken to my core awareness that if I didn't quit, I could die, and that I wouldn't. Before you die, you're dragged through the mud of humiliation and trouble for your family and all of this stuff, and then it ends in death. And I just didn't want any of this. And the epiphany was, I can just quit. I can just stop now. I don't need a rock bottom. I don't need something bad to happen. This is life and death, and I don't have to do this anymore. I can just stop now. And it was that awareness combined with like this feeling in my chest of there's no concise way to describe it, so I'll use my lengthy description, which is that if you were to see a puppy wander out onto a busy road and you go, right? Like you
Mhm.
gasp and you lunge. I felt like I gasped and lunged to save my own life, and then I was suspended in midair. Like it was like that feeling of was
Yes.
suspended in my chest for days. And I still drank. I had that awareness and I had that feeling, and I tried to drink it away because I didn't want to quit drinking on the one hand, but I couldn't make it go away. And I finally realized, this is it. This is my chance. I'm going to take it. And, um, and so I decided to quit, but first I told somebody, and no one really knew how much I was drinking. I was hiding it from my husband. I was hiding it from my children as best I could. And I was hiding it from everyone but myself, I guess. And so I went for a walk with a dear friend, and I told her that I was drinking too much. I told her how much I was drinking. She was shocked.
Mhm.
And she said, "Yeah, I can see why you need to change that. You're right. Like that's too much." And that was all I needed to hear. A lot of us that develop alcohol or addiction issues or isms of varying sorts, there's a lot we can lump together, right? Eating disorders, gambling. There's a lot of process addictions that are very similar. So for me, it showed up as alcohol use disorder. But a lot of us that experience that also, it goes hand in hand with codependency, which is having no sense of self-awareness, being completely lost as an entity of yourself and only existing as others see you. And so it wasn't enough for me to just know in my heart that I needed to quit drinking. I really needed another person to tell me, yes, this is true.
Yeah,
Because
and
I
like
was
to
so
hold us
lost.
accountable, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and also to validate it. Like, just even
Hmm.
for it to be true, I needed to hear it from someone else. And, yeah, so that made a difference. Telling the truth made a difference, and it was felt so good to tell the truth. It was such a relief for someone to say, "Oh, yeah, that's too much." I mean, thank you, right? Because I was holding it together and I was doing a pretty good job and getting a lot of validation from the world. So, the world was telling me, and I think a lot of women can relate to this. The world was telling me, yeah, you got to go out there and hustle and you got to do this and you got to look good doing it and you've got to have all these badges of achievement and all these status things. And that's how you're living your best life and doing it right. And, none of that was really serving me well. So, yeah, I kind of had to deconstruct my life a little bit. So when I wrote that piece that you read, I mean, part of me cringes when I hear it. Stay tuned. This should be interesting, because it sounds a little egotistical.
I didn't read it that way because I was like, I kind of felt that way. I was like, stay tuned. Like, who, for me personally, I was like, as if I was saying it, it was more like, it will be interesting for sure. And it has been interesting.
It has been. I thought when I wrote that, so this is the how naive I was. So first of all, I thought maybe one or two people might read it and that would be all I would need. Like, I didn't know much about blogging at all, but I understood running a website because I helped run the one for our business. So I knew that we could see the stats on how many people clicked on our website. So I thought, oh, well, I'll be able to see if someone clicks on my blog. You can't see who it is, but you can see that it's had so many clicks today. And I thought maybe if I get one or two clicks, that'll be all I need. Because again, I need someone else to validate that what I'm saying is real. And that'll help keep me accountable. Well, what I didn't know about blogs, and anyone who's listening who's thinking about quitting alcohol, even though the heyday of blogs is over, it's still a really useful tool for quitting drinking because blog platforms like WordPress or Blogger, those kind of things, they take your little blog and they will sometimes put it on a list to other people that are on the platform of, hey, you might be interested in this. Whatever you tag it with this, it'll highlight it for other people who have the same interests. So that means that a lot more people see it than you think are perhaps going to see it.
And how many people see your blogs today?
Oh, well, thousands.
Yeah.
Yeah, thousands. I don't really watch the stats on my blog anymore. The podcast that I do has 75,000 downloads a month.
Oh,
It's
it's so good.
astounding. Yeah, it's astounding. And that really has a lot to do with just having been around for a long time. So I have quite a big body of work now, and so there's a lot of material there. So it's not that 75,000 people are finding my work every month. It's that a fraction of that is, and then they're clicking on everything because they want to listen to all 300 episodes of the podcast or read all 200 entries on my blog and hear the whole story and sort of binge. I mean, we've sort of switched to being this sort of binge consumers now. So when we find something we like, we work through all the content we can get our hands on. And so there's always new people coming to recovery. I mean, I had no idea. I thought part of being in a cycle of addiction is being really quite isolated, quite focused on yourself, and just you're in survival mode. So you don't really, your awareness can be off. And so my awareness at that time was like, I was a mess and and I was the only one like me. And part of my healing just came from seeing the amount of people that are out there reading blogs, writing blogs, commenting, helping each other. And when you realize, oh, I'm not that special. I'm one of many. There's lots of people that can help me that I can learn from, and there's lots of people who need my help because every day thousands and thousands of people sit at their computer and type in, am I an alcoholic? Do I need to quit drinking? How do I know if I need to quit drinking? What is risky? Like they question the internet,
Yes.
and then they find all this material, and we make all these amazing connections.
It is incredible. I so resonate with that because I did feel isolated. I had no idea all of these tools existed. And now I just enjoy that there are so many just different voices and perspectives. So
Yeah.
depending on where you are in your journey or what you're looking for, there are incredible resources. And also it reminds me of when we were at that event in New York. I remember looking around that room. How many people would have been there? Like a few hundred?
500, I think. Yeah.
500. Because, yeah, it was a very full hotel ballroom. And we do feel so alone. And then I looked around and I'm like, this is remarkable. And I was like, this is so inspiring. Like, all of these women are here because we, like
Yeah.
messed up and felt all the ways that you're describing. And we're really trying to make a difference. And you felt like you could go to any woman in that room and she would have your back. And that's a really remarkable feeling.
Yes, and there's no small talk in a group like that.
No,
You don't have to talk about. You go right to like, oh, so what's your thing? Oh, I'm here for an eating disorder. What's your thing? Oh, I'm here because I'm an alcoholic. I mean, we don't say that at the grocery store, right?
no.
So we go straight to this stuff, and then, oh, well, what process are you using? Or, oh, have you read this book? Or have you tried that? Oh, well, and then people are like, oh yeah, and I've been through, XYZ, and they're talking about all of this stuff that you can just tell it's such a relief. But it's also, there's sort of this unspoken agreement as well of like, you're in this safe container, and nobody's going to record what you're saying and play, like, or nobody's going to leave there and tag you on Facebook and say, hey, Jean was just telling me all about her OCD, and no, it's like there's this bond because you're in this in between space where it's safe to just talk about that stuff, and where we're all there for the same reason, to heal and to work on our stuff, but then we're going to go back to our real lives and take away what we've gotten from that in between space and those in between relationships, and then go back into the world and keep living our life on that other level that we live on too.
Yeah. And with that, I want to ask you, in all of the people that you've interviewed now on your podcast, well, two things. Like, what are just the common threads that you're just like, I just hear this all the time? And then the second part of the question is like, is there anything about it like that surprises you?
I think the thing I hear all the time is people talking about, it's very common to hear people say that there was a moment where they lit up from their we talk about alcoholism on my podcast, but it could be anything, when
Hmm.
they were doing their thing and it lit them up, and they knew they had found their thing, or they thought they had found their thing. So very often I hear people talk about alcohol in that way, and it could be that they went to their first party in junior high or in college or whatever, and tried alcohol for the first time and experienced this relief from the unnamed discomfort that they didn't even know could be lifted from them. That's a really common experience. And then, as it spirals, they never get that feeling again. They're always seeking it, but it either works for a while until it doesn't, or it's something that they're chasing that they never seem to get. So that's one thing. And what surprises me sometimes is a couple of things. Sometimes I'm surprised at how people who have long sobriety can relapse. That surprises me. People who like have a really good solid sobriety and maybe 10 years, 12 years, and then, just either think, oh, I can drink again, or something really hurts them, like they something terrible happens and they turn to alcohol for help, and how quickly it unravels. That always takes me by surprise, because I guess I had in my mind um, that it would get easy.
And with that, how did you recover? Like, so, we have that day one
Mhm.
and we're getting started, but it's like we're numbing out other things, right? Like, so how did you like take it from day one to day two to day three to day four and then navigate tough times as they came up over the years?
I did what I guess is called white knuckling in the beginning. So the practical things I did to just get through the first few days was that I didn't have all of the alcohol out of the house, but there was no wine. And that was my drink of choice. And that was why I kept drinking, was because if it was in the house, I was going to drink it. So I didn't tell my husband that I had quit drinking, and there was no wine in the house, and I didn't buy any more. I would go out at night when I would normally drink, and I would go to, the department store, the grocery store, the drugstore, whatever, and I would get sweets, and I would get some nail polish, and I would get some, some snacks and things, and keep myself kind of busy all night. So that every time I wanted a drink, I would have like some orange slices or some ice cream, and just really kept busy, t- stuffing my face and comforting myself in other ways. And I started my blog, and that gave me something to do, and I checked it incessantly. And I was on the internet. I was on Twitter. Now, if you use the hashtag recovery posse, there's a big recovery group that uses that hashtag. So if you go on Twitter, create a anonymous Twitter handle if you prefer, and say, hey, I'm new to recovery, I need some support, and hashtag recovery posse or hashtag XA also works. X meaning like anything anonymous, like addiction
Okay.
anonymous, anything anonymous, like trying to quit basically is what hashtag XA meant when I quit drinking 9 years ago, and I think still means. So if you put that on Twitter, you will get a response. People will write back or tag me, like tag Unpickled blog, or tag the Bubble Hour and say, it's my day one, I need help. And someone did this for me. I wrote my blog, and then I set up a Twitter for Unpickled and tweeted, I started a blog, it's my first day of sobriety. Check it out to encourage me. And again, I just thought one person might see it, but some kind soul said, hey, everybody, Unpickled is new to recovery, let's all encourage whoever this is, because I was anonymous. I didn't know if I was a man or a woman. Let's all encourage this person. And then I got all these lovely tweets that were like, oh, it's the best decision you'll ever make. It's simple, but it's not easy. Hang in there. Read your blog, looks good. Keep going. And it was, oh, I just stood in my kitchen and cried
It's
because, okay,
amazing.
yeah. And so I try to do that for people as much as I can. I mean, I honestly could stay glued to my phone all day, every day, just doing recovery stuff. So for my mental health, I have to just do it in fits and starts. But yeah, it just reach out. There's lots of people that'll cheer you on. So I had that, which was completely unexpected. And I didn't know that even existed. And that was really lovely. And, my one friend that knew, so then I would touch base with her and say, okay, I made it through another day. And then I think I was about a week sober when we went out to dinner with my in laws, and they said, oh, let's order a bottle of wine. And I said, oh, I'm just going to have a cranberry soda. And my father in law said, oh, what, are you on the wagon? And I said, yeah, actually, I am. Now they're normal drinkers and social drinkers, so they didn't make a big deal about it, but it was a big deal to me.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like,
I remember it well.
and then my husband, who's also a normal drinker and doesn't drink a ton, said, um, oh, have I been drinking alone all week? And I said, oh, actually, yeah, you have. And of course, he hadn't noticed because he didn't drink like I drank. And so then a couple days later, I think I was 10 days sober, I took him out for lunch and I said, like, okay, I've got to tell you, um, I I've developed a drinking problem. I've quit drinking 10 days ago. I've started a secret blog. I've been blogging about it and talking to people on the internet for the last 10 days. And I think this is really serious and I think this is going to be my life now. And I need you to know about it and I need you to not tell me that I don't need to quit.
Yes. What did he say?
He was quiet and he took me seriously and I'm forever grateful that he did. I think sometimes people think they're being kind when someone confides in them that they're scared about their drinking and they think it's kind to say, "You're okay, you're fine. You just need to drink less," or, "Okay, I'll cut back with you." And, as kind as that can be intended, it's not kind. What's kind is to listen and to say, "Okay, I'm listening. I hear you. Sorry, I didn't see the signs and tell me what to do." And so that was the other thing he said. So he was pretty quiet that first day, and then a couple days later we worked together and we sat down in his office together and shut the door and he's like, "Okay, so tell me what you need from me. Like tell me what this means for me and how what are you expecting of me? Like how do I help you?" And he said something else that was really important. I can't remember if it was the first time we talked about it or a couple days later, but at some point he had the wisdom to say, if you're going to do this, you're going to do it and I'm going to hold you to it. So that means if we go out to dinner, you can't just say, "Oh, forget it, I'm going to order wine." Like you can't just stop doing it on a whim. I'm going to hold you to it. So if you're asking me to hold you accountable, I'm going to hold you accountable. And you have to then be accountable. And that was a real gift too. So he said, if you ever decide that you don't want to do this anymore, like we have to talk about it ahead of time and decide together if it's a good thing and make a plan for it. You can't just bail on a whim. And that always got me through the times where, where you are out to
Mhm.
dinner and the waiter's like, "Would you like wine, ma'am?" And you think, "Yes, I would." I knew that, like, no, I told him, we agreed, I'm not just going to toss this out on a whim. And probably, I'm assuming he said that because there were so many other times where I had said, I'm going to quit drinking and then said, like, "Oh, no, I'm not doing that anymore. Oh, that was last week. I'm fine. No, I'm not doing that." So he kind of knew that that was maybe a pattern that I had been doing. I don't know. And I'm really glad he said that. So for people that have family members that are quitting, a conversation like that can be really helpful too. But I was scared to tell him because I was scared he was going to tell me I didn't need to quit. And I was scared that he might say, "I don't want to be married to a sober person." And I knew that I was fighting for my life and I didn't want to have to choose between my life and my marriage. So I was really glad that he was accepting and took me seriously and was encouraging. And, it hasn't been easy for him because it did change the dynamics of our marriage in the long run for the better, but it's uncomfortable at times. And I was really, going through a transition like that is hard. And I might say at some point, "This is how it is now." And then the next time I'll be like, "Well, actually, in the beginning, Adrian, I would say, "It's fine. You don't have to change anything at all. Like, you just keep doing exactly what you're doing. I'll be doing exactly what I would normally do, except I'm not going to drink." And that
Yes.
doesn't work very well, as you know.
Yes.
So that again is that people pleasing, shape shifting thing that it was really contributed to the need to drink in the first place is the discomfort of being inauthentic and trying to people please and make other people like me and do what I thought I had to do to make other people like me. Like it never occurred to me to just be myself. I didn't know what that was, so it would have been kind of hard to do that anyway. So I but in the beginning was trying to say like, no, no one else has to do anything differently. And as I got my voice back and started to value myself and really value my sobriety, then I started to speak up and say, you know what? No, I'm not going to go to that backyard barbecue. Or, okay, fine, I'll go, but I'm only staying for an hour and I'm leaving, and you're going to have to find your own ride home. I'm not your designated driver anymore. Some of that stuff, was kind of, it was new for us. I wouldn't say I was a doormat or like I was a perfect little wifey all those other years. I don't want to come off as if I was super agreeable, but I certainly was I was advocating for myself in new ways and experimenting with new ways of trying to be sober and trying to navigate sobriety. And so he was along for the ride on that. And so I'm grateful that he was patient and accepting of me finding my way through that too. So it isn't easy. Um, and the other thing I really realize is that it took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that I had developed an addiction and that I now needed to identify as a sober person. And it took me a long time to accept the idea of needing sobriety in my life. And so it's unfair to expect that the other people around us are just going to magically get it because we say so. Like maybe they need a little bit of time to absorb and adjust to these changes that we've been slowly thinking about for a long time. And that can be a little frustrating, I think, for people that they sort of announce to their family that they've made this big decision and they're making this big change, and maybe they feel like they're not getting the support that they need right away. And I feel like that can just be because, well, yeah, because you've been telling them for 20 years, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine. It's
Yeah.
news to them that you're not fine.
Yeah.
And we're so used to repressing and hiding and so ashamed of not being fine or needing something, and speaking our needs or being imperfect or whatever, that it's takes people time to adjust and accept what we're still figuring out ourselves sometimes. So we have to be patient with the people around us too.
I think that's such an important statement, and I've heard a lot. I heard it in my personal life, and I've heard it a lot in the spheres that the recovery spheres too. Is that drinking is so, and I'm using my air quotes here, normal. That sometimes the people around you just want you to be normal.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, or if they participated in it, it's tougher for them, and it's just always surprised me. I'm like, okay, so now I'm the one at the party not putting all of these substances in my body, and I'm the abnormal one.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And there is the marketing machine of the alcohol industry that's pushing women really hard right now. So we're up against that. We're up against our social training that being a good host or hostess means keeping everyone's drinks full and having lots of interesting, lovely things for everyone to drink. And so if you go to a party and say, no, I'll just have water, um, they feel like, "Oh, great. Well, I went to all this work. You
Yeah.
want water? Are you kidding me?" But also, I think they want you to have fun, and they're conditioned to think that that means you have a drink in your hand. And so I think one thing that's really helped me is learning when I do socialize. I mean, lately, not many of us are socializing at all, right? Because we're
Yeah.
mid-pandemic here. But socializing, I've had to learn to express gratitude or to just go that extra step to say, "Oh, I'm having such a fun time," or "Oh boy, this food is great, what a treat." To acknowledge to the host that you're doing a good job. And I keep my own
Yeah.
glass filled, and I sort of take that off the table as the symbol of them doing a good job, and show them in other ways that I'm enjoying myself or that they've done their job. Sometimes I tell it depends on the person that's hosting or the situation, but often I'll say, "Oh, I've brought these for myself. Is it okay if I put them in your fridge? And I'll just help myself when I need a drink." And then they know, okay, I can take her off my to-do list. I don't have to worry about her. And if you're kind of vague and awkward, as we all are in the beginning, the poor host is like doubling down on trying to get you something. They're like, you seem uncomfortable and unhappy, and I'm going to have to work harder to be a good host to you. And when you're trying to be vague about, oh, no, thank you, um, it doesn't leave them with a lot of clues as to how to serve you. And so,
It is the worst. Now
yeah.
I have no problem saying no, thank you. Like I'm happy with my sparkling water, but in the beginning, yeah, you just feel so self-conscious. It was terrible.
Hmm. It is hard.
Like, would you say you enjoy yourself more now in these settings or life in general?
Yeah, I think I do. I don't go to things as often if I don't think I'm going to enjoy them, whereas before I would have gone and gritted my teeth and probably drank more when I got home. I wasn't someone who tended to get sloppy at events. I would just get increasingly anxious until I could leave and drink the way I wanted once I was at home. So I didn't have a lot of fun socializing really to begin with. Um, and now I think I do. I'm interested in people. I love talking to people and hearing their stories. And if I'm not having fun, I just try to be helpful. I'll go to the kitchen and do the dishes, or go where to the room where the kids are and watch a movie with the kids or something, or leave. Leaving is
Yeah.
fine. There's nothing wrong with checking out early and saying, oh shoot, I've got this other thing I have to go to, but this was lovely. Thank you so much, and making sure that you send a text or an email or a thank you card. Um, being a good guest, just I think
Hmm.
I'm a better guest. But overall, yeah, I am definitely more authentic in my life, and I do a lot more. I'm just so much more interested and engaged in my life because I'm not numbing out of it all the time.
And what helped you like not want to numb it out? Do you know what I mean? Like I think we realize that like there is a physical addiction, but there's always stuff underneath, right? That we're
Yeah.
numbing out, like pain and trauma and all sorts of things. Like how does that work?
So I think of it as that there's sobriety, which is quitting, and then there's recovery, which is healing the reason why you drank or used or shopped or why you
Mhm.
needed to numb in the first place. So, some things that I did that were really great for me was that I went to therapy and worked on some stuff in therapy, some old family stuff and some self-awareness. Did some work on something called internal family systems, which was really useful for me. And so I did some work there. I looked into, but did not join, different recovery programs. So I looked at the 12 steps, and why does that help? So writing out your resentments, or writing a list of all of your, taking an inventory, they call it step 4 is taking inventory. So why does that help? What is useful about that? Um, okay, so then you identify your role in it, and you're identifying resentments. Okay, resentments. Why does that help? Okay, well, let's do some work on that. So I kind of smorgasbord between 12-step recovery and smart recovery and another program at the time called LifeRing. I just looked at all of those materials and tried to apply it as much as I could to myself and learn as much as I could, and online connection. So those were really the main things. And then when I was 2 years sober, I got involved in the podcast that I now produce and host called The Bubble Hour. And that was really good because then I was talking to other people in recovery, and I went to a recovery retreat, and for the first time sat in sharing circles with other women. And so 2 years sober, when I sat in my first sharing circle and said, I here's my deal, here's my story, here's how I'm feeling, and listened to other people, and it broke me open
Yeah.
in a whole new way. All of a sudden, my recovery was not just about pushing a stone uphill and hiding it. It just ignited me. It lit me up. So that's probably my one regret. I think if I'd had the courage to go to a meeting of any kind earlier on in recovery, that would have all been there for me. I didn't have to muscle through those first 2 years quite so lonely. And I really love that. And so now I do drop in on 12-step meetings just to chat with other women in recovery, and they know that I don't do 12-step myself. They know that I didn't get sober with that, and they're welcoming anyway. And it's just really good to look at other people and to be around other people that get it. And those are probably the highlights of it. And I still do therapy. In fact, before you and I have talked today, I was doing hypnotherapy. I have OCD and I've tried a number of things to try and deal with it. And it's really tough. And so I'm trying hypnotherapy. And, I just had like a really powerful big ball, like a baby, in my session today. And just, had an awareness of being profoundly sad as a 12-year-old and not feeling that I could talk to my parents about it and feeling like I had to figure it all out on my own, and really realizing that this misguided feeling of having to shoulder everything myself and shapeshift and be bigger than I was and do it all myself. Really, like, I feel like today I had a little glimpse into maybe some of the origins of that. And so, that's after almost a decade of recovery, still learning things like that and being curious and willing to examine it and see what I can take away from it. So I don't think we really ever finish with it, really. I hope not anyway. It's pretty interesting stuff.
I don't think so either. Like, I think there are always like layers and learning. And I think like what I'm hearing you say, which I know I've experienced for myself, the difference is like a willingness to take a look at it, and just be
Yeah. Yeah.
curious and be like, okay, I don't need to numb this out. Like, I have tools, I have people, I can look at this, and I know I'm going to feel better if I do look at it and get rid of it.
Yeah, yeah, or just, I don't know, like, maybe let go of some shame. Like, I think I had so much shame because I have had imposter syndrome since I was a kid, and I think because I felt like I had to be an adult or act like an adult way too young. And the counselor I was working with today says, there's part of you that's still stuck there, that's it's still emotionally 12. So it's the discord between being 53-year-old grandmother that I am now and still having a 12-year-old inside of me that's hurting and needs some love and needs some caring. And it's the discord between the two. And yeah, boy, it does take some courage to go there and to do the ugly cry and to get that out, and then to just be really, really willing to sit with that and realize that I was always praised for being mature and handling things and being, making things look easy, and that can really mix you up. And to let go of that praise and say, okay, it's nice that I was praised. It felt good. But the truth is that hurt me doing that. That wasn't
Mhm.
good for me. And I need to stop saying everything's fine and I'm okay. I've got this. It's fine. It's fine. I don't need any help. And just like allow myself to be kind of weak and wounded. It's okay.
Yeah. Shame is just so powerful and it can just keep us so restricted.
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about your writing?
I can. So this is a 4-hour podcast, right? I can tell.
Well, I am trying to squeeze everything in, but I could talk to you for hours. So
And I'm super
we
chatty
might need
too.
to have a part two.
Well, let me tell you about my writing. So, my husband and I retired a few years ago. We were in the home building industry, and as we all know, the economy did a number on the home building industry, and so we retired a little earlier than we thought we would. And I have an English degree, and I always did a lot of writing actually for our company, and writing has always been an important part of my life. In fact, in my 40s, I did some songwriting and released a couple albums of music. But I've always wanted to write a novel, and so I wrote a novel last year. It took me a while to do it, but I finished it, and I haven't published it yet. And then I wrote a nonfiction book about recovery, which is the Unpickled Holiday Survival Guide, and not positioning myself as an expert, but more sweeping up the stories and experiences and helpful tips that were given to me and putting them together in a way that's quite easy to use. This is a book that I think would have just been really helpful for me when I was first getting sober, and even still sometimes.
Same.
So I released that last year, and it's just been really, people are just so wonderful about how much it's helped them. And songwriting and poetry are not really all that different. And so during the pandemic, I was writing a new novel about a songwriter turned poet, and about a songwriter who gets sober and has to try to sing on stage sober. And so she was supposed to have written some poetry in this novel, and so I was writing some poems for this character, and at some point the novel got stuck in a drawer and I never finished it, and I kept writing poetry, and then I realized, what I have here is not a novel. What I have is a book of poetry, and so I published that this summer as well. It's called The Ember Ever There, and it is poems. Some are about what it felt like to be in dysfunction, to be kind of lost within myself, and there's poems about the grief that I felt for leaving alcohol behind, and that was profound for me, the amount of grief that I felt for myself as a drinker, to grieve that past self, to grieve my relationship with alcohol. And then also, after I got sober, both my father and my father-in-law passed away within a few months of each other. And so to go through actual grief
Yeah.
without a numbing mechanism. So I wrote some poems about that. And then, interestingly enough, for me as a non 12 stepper, having interviewed so many people who talk about their experience in the 12 step program with such affection, I wrote one section of the book is 12 poems. Each one is another perspective on each of the steps. And so I'm not a member of the 12-step program. I didn't get sober using that, and yet my book contains a section that has a poem about each of those 12 steps, because the process is a healing process that
Mm-hmm.
any of us can use for any part of our life. And I do think we can pick and choose to some extent. We can smorgasbord, or patchwork is another word for it, patchwork our recovery that way. So yeah, so this book has become quite a little treasured piece of many toolboxes as well, because it does contain poems about the journey and the process of coming through and maintaining recovery.
It's amazing.
Thank
I'm just
you.
curious, like, in closing, because we don't have 4 hours. If there is someone listening, and you and I have both been there, where, finally there's certain words that cut through to you. If you think you might have a problem, but maybe you're ashamed. Or I know I was ashamed and scared to give up my coping mechanism. So it's like, what does this even look like? And to admit I had a problem um, felt awful. So, what would you say to somebody who might be in that spot right now?
Well, I guess sweep up your courage, muster it up, and treat yourself with the same loving, gentle care that you would extend to someone else. Because you're a person too, even if
Yeah,
you maybe have forgotten that. And what you're going through has separated you from that reality, has caused you to forget who you are and that you matter. And so you may need to get a picture of yourself when you were younger, like in childhood, or an age that you really remember vividly as feeling good, and keep that picture in front of you, and rescue that person. That person's still inside of you.
that's
And
beautiful.
yeah, I really think that is helpful. And I want to read a very short poem that I think captures this up.
Oh,
It's called
amazing. I was going to ask you, I meant to ask you before, and I was like, oh, I don't know if she has one on hand. So this is absolutely perfect.
This is one of the first poems in the book called Why Now? Do not ask why now, when the better question is how could I live another moment separated from myself? And I think that's what it really is about, is that it's time to get back to you. It's time to make yourself whole. And unfortunately, there is no holding pattern when it comes to addiction. It is never static. It escalates. And so even though you might feel like you can go the rest of your life drinking a bottle of wine a night because it's not that bad and everything is still okay, the problem is it doesn't stay at that amount. The amount will increase and the effect it has on you will change, and it will erode who you are, and it will slowly become unmanageable. And there's a great expression that a friend said in a meeting, which is that your addiction wants you dead, but it'll settle for making you miserable.
It's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So if we can catch you where you're at today, you don't have to go another step farther. You don't have to be any more miserable, and you sure as heck don't have to die from this disease. You don't have to hit a bottom. You don't have to do anything, except you do have to quit drinking if you want to get better. And it's not that hard. It
We
really
did
is.
it.
We did it. It's doable, and it's actually easier to be abstinent and have no alcohol than it is to have some now and then, or to have just a little on weekends, or all of that BS that we try to do. It is so much easier to make one decision, be done, and do things differently going forward. So much easier and so much better for you. And I don't know if you've noticed, but Adrian and I have done a lot of giggling throughout the last hour. So you'll be happy again. You will laugh again, and you'll get back to who you know you really are and who you really want to be. It's in there. And getting alcohol and whatever other addictions are in your life, getting rid of that will allow you to bring that part of you forward and really stand in your power of who you are and just really live your life authentically. It feels so much better.
It does feel so much better. And I just want to, I just love the work that you're doing. So in the show notes, we're going to link to Jean's books. Her podcast is incredible. Now we know I'm not really on Twitter, but now I'm going to go on, and there are just so many resources. So thank you for today, but for all the great work that you do and will continue to do. It's just so amazing.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all you're doing too.
Thank you for listening. May some of the wisdom shared here inspire your most intentional living. For more information about this episode, this podcast, intentional living, and my work in the world, please visit mayyouknowjoy.com. You can also find my May You Know Joy and Seeds of Intention cards there, and my book, Intentional Days. You'll also find details for the Intentional Days membership, where you can gain access to a thriving community of intentional souls and lots of regular inspiration. I've got you covered. Until next time, I wish you great joy and many intentional days.